Back out of recess, our committee meeting, if everybody is ready. Court reporter's ready, council's ready. Very good. So we left off with taking a lot of very good public comment on agenda item number 7. So I'm going to open it up for committee members to make comment. I know we've had some comment already, but if there's any new comments that committee members would like to make, that would be great. I'd also acknowledge that Ms. Dempsey is also with us now from CDPH.
Hey, Jeff. Yep, I'm on.
Thank you. Welcome.
So, Chair Farrow, I see Committee Member Nevdahl has her hand raised. Committee Member Nevdahl, if you would like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself.
My apologies. I simply did not lower my hand. I will.
All right. We have Committee Member Stevenson. Keith, do you have comments on the?
Committee Member Jacobson, your hand is raised.
I don't have comments. I was just letting you know that I was back on board.
Great.
Okay. Everybody has lowered their hands, Chair.
Very good. So we've had public comment. It doesn't appear that we have any one of our committee members that want to make any additional comments. There were a couple other comments. Committee member, Vice Chair Heidelbach.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, and maybe I'm looking at this too simplistically, but it seems to me that looking at the regulations, the BCC's definitions for obviously the owner and then those with financial interests are fairly robust. And a lot of these Cal Cannabis and also CDPH seems to mostly follow what the BCC does with some exceptions. And so I'm wondering to move this forward, if it's outside, you know, if bearing obviously legal review, should we create a motion that asks to simplify these regulations to combine and basically ask CDFA and CDPH to mirror the definitions that the BCC has put forth?
If that's in the form of a motion, do we have a second?
Second, Beverly Yu.
Okay. Any comments from the remaining committee members on the motion and second?
This is Matt. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just Christine, I get what you're saying there. Makes perfect sense. I think that would help streamline everything and bring everybody back into sort of working on the same page. Do we know offhand whether the other agencies are able or contemplating a shift in their language as well, so that everybody's is standardized? Or are they looking for us, you know, and maybe the staff can speak to this a little bit. Are they looking for us to come into compliance with them, or, you know, what direction, you know, is anticipated, or are they able to, you know, create that same conformity with us?
So if I may try to take a stab at this, I think what our role was, if there was anything that the committee felt specific about when we give advice to the 3 different agencies as they begin to do the work to unify their regs into a single reg package for the new oversight agency, licensing agency that we will have next July, hopefully. Our goal was to give the first round of advice. Of course, there will be work done by the attorneys for each of those agencies, and I would imagine the state as well, as they do those combinations, taking into account recommendations from this committee. and then obviously other recommendations that are made by the public as they go through the formal reg-making process. So in a sense, we're trying to send, I think, a very broad, recommendation that they can work from, kind of from where we're going from. And I think what Vice Chair Heidelbach is trying to capture, I think, is similar to what was the intent of Committee Member Cermak, but I'll let him speak to that, which was having a recommendation that says we want it, clean, transparent, and simplified, where we've heard a lot from the different applicants that are in the space and other folks that are trying to use that, whether they're consulting for these businesses on how do they, make all of, if they're applying for multiple different types of license type, making sure that they know the process for all of them. So,
Okay, got
does that
it.
make
Thank you
sense?
for the clarification.
Yeah. Committee Member Cermak?
This is just a question. Are we attempting to achieve something which is then going to have to be redone when there is a single unified agency? Or is the goal here to do something that would then be adopted by that unified agency?
Well, I can try to take a stab at that. Unless somebody else here at the BCC or any of the other licensing agencies would like to. Okay. Here's what I would say, Dr. Cermak. Our job is an advisory role, and the difference between this set of regs versus the ones that came out initially, that the reg package, the draft reg package was kind of prepared for us when we sat down at our very first meeting in November of 2017. And we were given the opportunity at that point to make some recommendations, of which many of them were adopted. Because we have time now and we have an underlying reg pack based upon the 3 separately operating licensing agencies, we have the time to weigh in advance this time. Whatever we recommend will be considered as they craft their first draft package that will then go to the public. And it also gives the public an opportunity through our access point to give us some comments to help in that advance role. But ultimately, it will go through the formal reg-making package, and the state will make the final licensing agency will make the final determination on the final regs after public comment. Does that answer the question? Dr. Cermak?
Oh, yes, that does answer the question. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions from committee members?
Yes, you have several hands that are raised, starting with Ben Wu.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Committee Member Wu had his name up first. Ben, please provide your comments.
First, could we just, could you repeat what Member Heidelbach's proposal or motion was, just so I could hear that again?
Could our court reporter read back Ms. Heidelbach's recommendation was, or motion was?
Yes, can you give me a second to find it? It's back ways.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And maybe I'm looking at this too simplistically, but it seems to me that looking at the regulations, the BCC's definition for obviously the owner and then those with financial interests are fairly robust, and a lot of these, Cannabis and also CCPH, seems to mostly follow what the BCC does with some exceptions. Let me see if I can. Should we create a motion that asks to simplify these regulations to combine and basically ask CDFA and CDPH to mirror the definitions that BCC has put forth. That I believe is what it was.
So I believe the motion was that we make a recommendation that CDPH and CDFA mirror the licensing regulations related to definition of owner and financial interest, information and documents required from owners and financial interest holders, and required documents related to business formation and finance.
Hi, this is Tamara. Let me jump in real quickly. Vice Chair, can you clarify whether or not your motion was just referring to the definitions of owner and financial interest, or if that also included the required documentation as well?
I think the required documentation, I think they should all be consistent. I'm really looking at this from the perspective of eventually all three licensing agencies going into one entity. And from the way it is written, most of it, not all, it appears that the BCC has robust definitions and the others may not. And I understand, and I did mention bearing legal review. And I know that Member Wu brought that up, that we're not sure if all of the definitions for the BCC would apply to CDFA and CDPH. But I think that that would be something to look at. So to answer, the short answer is yeah, to include the owner, the financial interest holder, and then the information and documents required, bearing in mind that those entities are going to have different required documents.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
This is a member who just kind of following up to that thought. I support Vice Chair Heidelbach's suggestion. I had written down a while back, that I said something to the effect that, I was going to propose we recommend to BCC that it unifies the definitions and rules concerning ownership across all licensing and regulatory agencies. In addition, we recommend to BCC that it unifies the information and documentation requirements across all licensing agencies and regulatory, or all licensing and regulatory agencies. And lastly, that we encourage BCC to revise these rules in the spirit of promoting transparency, simplicity, and then I forgot kind of what the third tenet that Member Cermak had mentioned, but if someone wants to fill that in. But those are kind of the three ideas I thought that we could kind of push forward as a motion if Vice Chair Heidelbach was open to that.
My only concern, Ben, would be to have one licensing agency dictating to two other licensing agencies if we do it that way. I know that I think the early definition of the new agency is who's going to be the controlling agency at some point would be something like the Department of Cannabis Control. We don't know for sure yet, but if you could frame that in a way that the new Department of Cannabis Control would be the ones having them, maybe would be better.
This is Tamara again. I just wanted to remind you all that you do have a motion pending from Vice Chair Heidelbach that's got a second from Ms. Yu. So I don't know if what Mr. Wu's trying to do is suggest a different motion procedurally. So I think we need to kind of figure out what we're doing at this point in terms of, is this just discussion of him supporting her motion, or is he trying to propose amendments or whatnot?
This member Wu speaking. I apologize.
That's what I assumed Mr. Wu was doing, was trying to get either an amendment for something he felt was more what he had already written down. But Wu?
This member Wu speaking. Yeah, I apologize. I was trying to expand on Ms. Heidelbach's proposal, I guess. If I did that inappropriately, I apologize. I think her focus was on just talking about information and documentation, and I was just trying to capture rules and definitions of ownership as well, kind of summing up all of item 7. But I'm open to handling it both ways if we want to stick to 7A, 7B, 7C, etc.
So based on her clarification, my understanding of the motion that's pending is that CDPH and CDFA mirror the BCC definitions and required documentation for, and so that would cover, I think, all 7A, B, and C. Ms. Heidelbach, is that correct?
Yeah, that was my intent, was to include all 3.
This is the moderator. Dr. Cermak does have his hand raised.
I'm not in a position to know why the other 2 agencies, other than BCC, wrote the regulations that they did. And I'm also not in a position to know for sure that the regulations that BCC has done are the very best. So my tendency would be, instead of supporting the motion as made by Ms. Heidelbach, is to suggest as a recommendation from us that the 3 agencies work together to present regulations covering these topics that are consistent among the agencies, that are easy for applicants to understand, and that provide transparency for the public to know who is funding the different licenses.
If that's a motion, I like to make that. I'd like to second. If it could be a substitute motion.
Our challenge is we have a live motion pending.
But he could make a substitute motion.
We could make a substitute motion. That's true.
And then
or we can make a friendly amendment to include what Dr. Cermak just stated.
What I stated was inconsistent with telling them to accept the BCC regulations.
Right.
Folks, just don't forget to tell me who you are. This is the court reporter.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
I was Alice who made the second the substitute motion.
Committee member is the one who made the second to the substitute motion. Committee member Cermak made the first motion. Committee member Vice Chair Heidelbach, sorry about that, Vice Chair, made the clarification point to that. So what I would like to do is, if Vice Chair Heidelbach would prefer to withdraw her and get the second for Vice Chair Heidelbach's motion to withdraw, and I believe that was Committee Member Yu, then we could move on the second motion if that's what the remaining members would like to take action on.
So this is Member Heidelbach, and the reason why, and let me kind of explain why I suggested that the other 2 agencies follow what the BCC already has. Like I mentioned a couple times, it appears that their definitions and their financial information requirements are more robust. So when we're talking about transparency, and when we talk about something like, someone, say, purchasing a home, and they have to provide numerous, pieces of documentation to explain to folks where, money came from, or, how they make their money. And I don't think that, for example, here, financial information from the applicant from the BCC, we've got, and this is 16 CCR 5002, you have, accounts maintained by the financial institutions. We've got loan information, investment information, and under Cal Cannabis, it says no disclosures required. And under CDPH, there's no disclosures required. So if we're talking about transparency, my concern would be that if we are interested in knowing who is behind these businesses and that they're held accountable, if we leave it up to the 3 separate branches, which are eventually going to be turned into one anyway, would we want to go with the Bureau who actually outlines in detailed manner what is needed from these folks?
So this is Member Clifford. I'll just break in. I have my hand up, but I'll just break in. I was going to I just want to reinforce that last point. And that's why I support actually this motion, is because it's based on the finding that it is the most robust of the existing agency regulations. And while I certainly sympathize with the need for simplicity and workability, I think there's some tension sometimes between that and transparency from the standpoint of the public. And it's really, really hard to, you're dealing with complicated ownership structures and investment structures to make sure we're getting all the information that's needed. And I would opt towards the most. I think that absolutely we need to have consistent regulations amongst all 3. That is desirable, but I would want to opt towards the most comprehensive and complete set of regulations, not knowing more about the issue. So I just want to second that last point.
And this is Chairman Farrow. The one thing I would also say is that though the documents and information provided for applicants is more transparent under the BCC in the sense of for the agency, the other 2 agencies make access to some of the information more transparent to the general public. So if we're going to look at the entire issue and the recommendation to make sure it's more transparent, we might be better off having a motion that calls to the best set of requirements that would allow for ease of applicants to participate and stakeholders to be able to see what they are providing. So that would be the direction I would recommend. And we put the onus, or our recommendation is on the attorneys for the 3 different licensing agencies to work together to come up with a recommendation based upon that kind of guidance, which was true to what Dr. Cermak talked about at the beginning, even before we got to this motion putting together. But I leave that to you folks to make that decision.
This is Tamara. Just let me give you one quick point there. What documentation's available to the public is not necessarily part of our regs for the cannabis industry. That's governed by the Public Records Act, privacy laws, and whatnot. At different times, different information may be available to the public or not, depending on where it is in the process. So I just want to make that clear that what is or isn't available to the public is governed by a different body of law, actually several different bodies of law than just our regulations.
Thank you for that clarification. I in no way meant to say that they're not providing it, but I did believe is that there may be some meeting on what could be crafted in a way that's consistent.
So Chair Farrow, this is the moderator. You currently have 7 hands that are raised.
Yes, and this is the co-moderator. Committee member Devdahl has had her hand raised for a very long time, so I would like for her to have a chance to comment. And I'd like to remind other committee members that if you would like to provide a comment, please do not unmute yourself. Please raise your hand and we will get to you, so that way we can make sure everybody's getting a chance to speak. Thank you. Go ahead, Committee Member Devdahl.
Hello, this is Committee Member Nevadal. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. So I feel like we heard a lot of public comment and then also received written comments that the financial interest holder kind of lacking a minimum floor, a de minimis component to it, or a baseline percentage creates significant challenges operationally. And so I would not support a motion that suggests that we adopt what's currently in place, because I feel like we would not be addressing the issues that are occurring in relationship to owners and financial interest holders. However, I do strongly support the streamlining of definitions. So whatever that definition is for owner should be consistent for all license types. Whatever that definition ends up being for financial interest holders should be consistent for all license types. And it should be utilized consistently in relationship to all license types throughout the body of regulations and with metric, so that we eliminate this confusion we're having with operators trying to track what is truly applicable to them in their situation. I also think that the regulations, in their kind of lack of clarity around owner and the differences that we see from the trio of regulations, are definitely confusing in how owner is used versus direct owner, and how management and contractor activities tie into owner. I'm fully supportive of transparency and of the ability to understand kind of where the financial interests are, especially since we have a statutory mandate to ensure that there is that the testing facilities are truly independent. But I would feel remiss if we weren't, as a committee, acknowledging and attempting to address some of the operational challenges folks are having around these two terms, owner and financial interest holder. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Member Yu?
I recognize I had seconded the vice chair's motion, and this was really done in the spirit of streamlining what we're seeing here, the 3 sets of regulations. I hear colleagues here who have discussed, this other motion that may actually incorporate more of kind of the sentiment of the transparency, the ease of the application, the tenets we all, discussed here. So I am happy to remove my second vice chair if that, or I am happy to also suggest that we possibly amend your existing motion here so that it incorporates, working with the 2 departments, CDFA and CDPH as well, to ensure transparency and ease of application.
I'm open to amendments.
Member Clifford?
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. I missed some names. I missed some names there. I'm sorry. Who said I'm open to amendments?
Sorry, that was Heidelbach.
Thank you.
Member Clifford, did you have a comment? Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I do not. Thanks. It's moot at this point. Thanks, though.
Committee Member Wu, did you have an additional comment?
Yeah, I did. I just want to clarify, one, I support, Member Nevedal's comment that, this discussion, at least for me, is more about the spirit of what we're doing here. Going back to, we're not lawyers, and I don't want to say that I think BCC's language is better than any of the other departments. I don't think it's our responsibility to get into who's better and make that determination. I just wanted to say that, we should be recommending, I guess, to the agencies that they unify their definitions and rules, right, regarding ownership, information, documentation requirements, et cetera, that the agencies should, again, I don't care who takes the lead, but ultimately, I think the public, right, they want a simple set of regulations that they can understand and promotes transparency. So that's what I'm in favor of. And, if someone wants to propose either an amendment or a new motion to get that done, I'd be supportive of that.
Thank you. Committee Member Bullion, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the name. Forgive me.
This committee member Bullion, what I was going to recommend was something less comprehensive and more streamlined. With financial interests, there are a lot of different scenarios that just overcomplicate the licensing process. Knowing who owns what interest in a license is really about the appropriate department having that insight and not really a public issue. Overcomplicating it with something more comprehensive just harms and limits the license holder without accomplishing the intent and without really providing the Bureau with that insight. So, like I said, my recommendation would be something more streamlined and less comprehensive. Get these licenses up and running, get the businesses up and running. The more hurdles you set up, no matter what hurdles are put in place, there's always a work around it. It really comes down to having the capital to be able to do that. So I think something more streamlined would actually be a lot more effective than something more comprehensive.
Thank you. Vice Chair Heidelbach, you have your hand raised. Would you like to make a comment? If so, unmute yourself. Committee Member Bullion, you also have your hand raised. Are you wishing to make an additional comment or?
No, I'm sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Chair Farrow.
Yeah, so we have two motions in second, even though there's been some discussion. We had an initial motion in second, and then we had a substitute motion in second. I believe under the rules for managing a meeting like this, we would have to take a vote on the substitute motion first, if we were going to move with that. And then if it passes, it would be the driving motion. If it fails, then it would fall back to the initial motion in second for consideration. I believe because we have these, and unless there's anybody on either of them wishing to withdraw, we should open up public comment on the motions on the floor. Can we do comment on both motions? Yes, sure. I think we can. So,
Chair Farrow?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I do have my hand up. I would like to, Heidelbach, Kristen Heidelbach. I would like to move to modify my original motion to reflect that the BCC, CDFA, and CDPH work together to streamline their definitions, information and documents required, and required documents related to business formation and finances to be consistent with one another.
Did I second it?
Well, hold on one second before we get a second. We have that substitute motion that I believe, Ms. Huffman, that you seconded. So if you're interested in that motion in preference to your substitute motion, if you were to withdraw your second to that initial substitute motion, then if it failed to get another second from the original one by Dr. Cermak, it would die without a second. And then we could entertain the modified motion by Vice Chair Heidelbach. So when you're asking about making a second to Vice Chair's, wait, let me just make sure with the attorneys that is the appropriate Robert rules. It's just we've gotten a lot of motions.
Yeah, there's a lot of motions and changes. So I think where we really are right now, we have both the initial motion and the substitute motion pending. Typically what we do is move forward to determine if the substitute motion is going to go forward, and then that would essentially kill the initial motion. If it doesn't, then we go back to the original motion. Another way of doing it, though, would be for either the substitute motion or the original motion to be withdrawn. And then we would be looking at whatever was left, and then you could potentially propose amendments to that, which might be procedurally a little less complicated if that's kind of the direction the committee wants to go. But I think it really depends on, what we're going to do here with the substitute motion and whether or not either of those motions want to be withdrawn at this point in time.
Is that Ms. Colson?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
I would like to withdraw my second. This is Alice Huffman.
Our second is now gone for the substitute motion.
You do currently have 3 hands raised. You've got Member Heidelbach, Member Cermak, and Member Wu.
So let me start with Dr. Cermak because his motion was the motion that just lost a second. Dr. Cermak, would you like to look for another second for your motion, or would you be willing to withdraw and we can go back to the original motion for either modification or withdraw and we can start from scratch?
Like the modification that Heidelbach made has the two motions very much in the same arena. And so I'm perfectly okay with withdrawing the substitute motion and just a request of Heidelbach to please define what you meant by streamline. I wasn't sure about that, what that word meant.
My intent, we had a few folks during public comment, I believe his name was Shaman, who suggested that the definitions are onerous and hard to follow. So I think that when I talk about streamline, I mean taking the 3 separate licensing entities and also providing clarification for what the BCC already has, and making sure that it's easy for folks to understand, but that there's also one set of definitions for each entity. Does that make sense? Does that clarify?
Yes, that clarifies it so that we have consistency and that the regulations are consistency among the 3 agencies. The regulations are clarified so they're easier for people to understand and that they're robust enough. I think you mentioned that earlier, that the BCC is robust enough that the public can be aware of where the funding is coming from. So I support that completely.
So are you withdrawing your motion, Dr. Cermak?
Yes, I did say that.
Okay, very good. So we're now back to the original motion that was made by Vice Chair Heidelbach and seconded by Committee Member Yu. So let's start with Committee Member Yu. Would you consider either withdrawing or allowing an amendment to the original?
Yes, I would like to allow for amendment to the original motion.
Very good. And therefore, Committee Member Vice Chair Heidelbach, would you like to make an amendment? Let me just, before you do though, remind everybody, the purposes of all this work is that there will be only one agency doing licensing, and we're trying to make that work. So it's good that we tell them don't try to create a different licensing structure based upon license type. But I think our message should be clear that when they make the permanent regs for the new licensing agency, that they should be consistent across all license types. So that way, very simple for an applicant to follow the procedures and the documents. So with that, Vice Chair Heidelbach, do you want to take a stab again at the repeating what your intent was, or would you like to have, if you feel it's been captured in our minutes, would you like to have the court reporter read back what your last full motion amendment was?
Yes, the court reporter, if she could read it back.
Just hang on one second. No problem.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, I'm going to try this, folks. I would like to move to modify my original motion to reflect that the BCC, CDFA, and CDPH work together to streamline their definitions, information, and documents required, and required documents related to business formation and finances to be consistent with one another. And Ms. Huffman, committee member Alice Huffman seconded it.
Hi, this is Tamara again. I don't think that modification was actually seconded by Ms. Huffman.
Okay.
Prepared to make a second, but we paused her ability to do that until we could clean up all the outstanding motions and substitute motion. And we've done that, so I believe we'd be looking for a second.
If it's okay, it's Tamara again. I'm going to suggest, Vice Chair Heidelbach, maybe you just repeat the motion or state it how you want it now with what amendment you're proposing. Because I think with all the different motions and the attempt, but then with the other motions pending, it's gotten pretty confusing for everyone. So if there's no objections from the chair or anybody else, I think that might be the way to move forward on this right now.
I have no objections if you're comfortable, Vice Chair Heidelbach.
Sure. Yes. So I move to modify my original motion that the Bureau of Cannabis Control, CDFA, and CDPH work to streamline the definition of owner and financial interest holder, the information and documents required from owners and financial interest holders, and that the required documents related to business formation and finances be consistent and streamlined among all three licensing entities.
Very good.
Tamara's going to have to check me on that one.
I was just going to say, I was going to ask.
Everybody's talking at the same time. I did not hear any of that. Sorry.
Sorry. This is Chair Farrow, and I was going to ask our attorney to make a comment on that.
Yeah, this is Tamara Colson. I think that works, except for I think maybe what you're looking to do is at the end, instead of saying that it's consistent and streamlined between the three licensing authorities, between license types, because I think that's what you were talking about earlier, so that when we're actually one entity, it's consistent amongst the license types, because there won't be three separate licensing authorities anymore. Is that what you were trying to convey?
Well, I'm looking at present tense right now. We don't currently have one licensing authority. My desire, obviously, would be that if these three entities come up with the same definitions, that whatever licensing authority takes over would then adopt those. So it wasn't the way that it's outlined for us, and the documentation that we received outlines it by the Bureau of Cannabis Control, CDFA, and CDPH. So I'm looking at, it's fine, we can change it to the license types, but we're not there yet. And we don't know when we're going to get there where we will have consolidation. So I'm looking at present tense fix would be to have the three licensing authorities be on the same page with definitions and requirements.
I appreciate that. My challenge would be is that the length of time it would take to start it now through the public noticing process, we'd be overlapping the process that's going to be beginning very shortly for the new aligned. So if you made some comment that said that this was your recommendation with the intent of having these things absolutely when the agencies and the Bureau form one agency, that might be helpful, but.
Yeah, this is Tamara again. I mean, you can certainly make your motion to include that if you like, but from kind of a legal and procedural standpoint, this package that we're seeking input on would be, what do we want to see in terms of these topics potentially as we go forward with the regulation package for consolidation. The consolidation right now is slated for, the next fiscal year, so less than a year from now. And because of the rulemaking process and whatnot, what we're really probably looking at is the consolidated reg package will really be the next one, and you won't see necessarily significant separate packages from the different licensing authorities in the next several months because of the consolidation and how long the regulation process takes. So that was really the goal here. You can certainly put your motion based on that, but keep in mind that the package that this input will help draft will be the package for one consolidated licensing authority that encompasses everything that's currently being handled by 3 licensing authorities.
So this is Vice Chair Heidelbach. That was what I said initially, was that the intent would be, because we are going to be consolidating. So if it is easier that we say license type instead of the 3 licensing entities, I'm fine with that.
That's your motion. So if you want to do it that way, I think that would probably be helpful in terms of the guidance licensing authorities for this consolidated package, because we'll be working together to create one set of regs for the whole department.
Do we have that captured, that motion? And if so, can we get a second?
It's Tim Cermak, I second.
Before we vote, this is
What I have is the motion. This is Tamara again, just so we're all clear before we have further discussion and public comment. Vote that, so Vice Chair Heidelbach has indicated that BCC, CDFA, and CDFC work to streamline the definition of owner and financial interest and the information and documents required for owners and financial interest holders, and the formation and finance documents, that it be consistent and across license types and streamlined. Does that sound correct?
That sounds correct.
This is the moderator. Our court reporter was trying to indicate something to the panel.
I think it's too late. They were all talking at the same time, but thank you. I appreciate it.
So Vice Chair Heidelbach, is that right in terms of your amended motion?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
And Mr. Cermak, was that what you intended to second?
Did that register? I said, yes, it is.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. Chair Farrell, I think you can move on now that we have the motion sorted out.
We actually have one more committee member. Committee member Clifford, you have your hand raised. Would you like to make a comment? If so, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to, as the motion was last stated, came out a little different this last time, and we have 2 different concepts in there now, which is to make the regulations consistent across license types and streamlined. And so streamlined before kind of meant both. It kind of means something separate now as the motion was stated. I just want to be careful about that because in my experience working with regulations, streamlined is generally understood to mean reducing in complexity and making it as as simple a regulation as possible. I appreciate the clarification that Mr. Cermak got a little while ago about. I'm not sure that's what we intend here, or if it is, I want to be clear about that. It seems to me what we want is one consistent set of regulations that apply to all license types. I'm not sure we also want to say streamlined because that again seems to imply that we want to just make these as simple as possible, and that could come at the at the expense of robustness and transparency. So that's my point. I don't know what folks think of that, but I wanted to raise it.
Is there any other discussion on the points raised by Mr. Clifford?
And I guess, Mr. Chairman, I guess I could have said as a question, like, is that what the motion means? I mean, do we want both those things? Do we want a simplified regulation as well as a consistent one across license types, or is the intent just to have consistency?
The intent is. Vice Chair Heidelbach, did you want to respond to that since this was your motion?
The purpose of using streamline was because we've had multiple people, one of them being member Nevedal, discussing that some of the definitions are confusing. So it wasn't really, when I used the word streamline, not in the sense to make it simpler, but that it's easier for the operators to understand.
Does that clarify your question, Mr. Clifford?
It does, but I guess my concern then is I'm worried that if we stress that policy concern of making it easier for operators to understand, will that come at the expense of robustness and transparency from a public standpoint? Because I do think that that's important as well. And so that's my concern with the word streamline in that sense.
Are you asking a particular word that could be considered as a friendly amendment that would accomplish what was said and what was intended?
As I would do a friendly amendment, we would remove the word streamlining and simply ask for consistency in definitions to apply across all license types. Well, hang on. No, I'll amend that, Mr. Chairman. Clarity, I think, would be probably to my mind, that would be a preferable word than streamlining. I think clarity is something we all want in a regulation.
Vice Chair Heidelbach?
I'm open to that amendment.
Second, Dr. Cermak, are you satisfied with that amendment, replacement of that word with clarity versus streamline?
This is Tim Cermak. I was yelling yes as loud as I could, but I finally yes, I am.
Very good. So we have an amendment to the word streamline replaced with clarify or clarity.
You do have a comment.
So Committee Member Nevedal, your hand is raised. Would you like to make a comment? Okay, she has lowered her hand. Committee Member Bulbullion, your hand is raised. Would you like to make a comment?
Yes, my comment would be to actually leave the word streamline in there and keep it actually simplified, because here's the thing, all the complaints, all the comments, all the questions have all been about that requirement being burdensome. The primary burden is on the license holder. The secondary burden would be placed on the BCC. Again, the public really has no interest in knowing who has a financial interest in any of these licenses. And if we can all agree and everybody agrees that all liability stops with the license holder anyway, it's really on the license holder, and there's no benefit to the public to knowing who the financial interest holders are in a company or who's financially benefiting from one of these licenses. It's really about the agencies and the Bureau knowing whether it's for enforcement purposes or whatever purposes. So I think that's where if we keep it more streamlined and we keep it simple, it's going to benefit everybody across the board, because the opposite of that doesn't really benefit the public anyway. So I think we're just overcomplicating it.
And I apologize. This is Member Nevedal. I pressed the wrong button and missed my mute opportunity, unmute. And I just want to strongly second Member Babolian's comments. He took the words right out of my mouth. Thank you.
Dr. Cermak, you have your hand raised. If you would like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, this is Tim Cermak. I would have to disagree with the two previous comments, because if there's ever a pattern of malfeasance or abuse, it would be in the public's interest to learn whether or not it was the same financier behind multiple different companies and different licenses that was behind that pattern. So I think that the transparency to the public is very important.
Committee Member Babolian, you have your hand raised. If you'd like to make a comment, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, my response to that would be, what does it benefit the public to know who has a financial interest in any one of these companies? If it gets to a point where it does become a public concern, you obviously have litigation and you have court scenarios and procedures that would get that information disclosed. But out the gate, for purposes of getting these businesses up and running, getting the license issued, again, it does not benefit the public to know who has a financial interest in what licenses. And especially unless that public is harmed or that individual is harmed, at which point you're already dealing with the courts, that information is already available automatically. So for licensing purposes, it just overcomplicates it.
Dr. Cermak, do you have a response? Your hand is raised.
I just can't find how to lower my hand right now. I'm sorry. No more comments.
No worries. Member Nevedal?
No, thank you.
So having no more comments from the group, and it doesn't appear that there's amendment, so let's open up the public comment and hear what some of the public has to say.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type "I would like to make a public comment" and send to all panelists. I will be answering comments in the order that they are received. If you are strictly calling in, please feel free to send a chat to host requesting to make a public comment. All other means to request public comment will not be addressed. I will pause a moment to allow individuals an opportunity to access this feature. We do have an individual identified as Lindsay Jones. You will have 90 seconds to make your comment and be given a 30-second reminder. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, everyone. This is Lindsay Jones. Thank you for allowing me to make comment. I do think it's very important that the public know the financial interests behind the companies. I am a farmer and cultivation license holder, and I think that it's especially important in our space that the authenticity of who is behind the company is something that's very transparent. It shouldn't be something that you don't need to know, even if it does create some barrier to entry. I would just ask why. Why wouldn't you want your company to be more transparent? It just seems like this whole space is about healing, and I think that people should know who you are, and that's the end of my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we have not received any additional requests for public comment. Would you like for me to close the Q&A feature? I stand corrected. We did just receive an additional request. It's from a Max. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you, CAC. Max Michelonis of K Street Consulting here. I appreciate the feedback by members Nevedal and Bullion regarding both, standardizing and simplifying the regulatory requirements. I do think that, as some of the examples that were brought up previously, the requirements on financial interest holders that every member of a sales team that receives a commission is required to be a financial interest holder and added as they're hired. I think there are some clear situations that have been detailed in the public comments, the written public comments, which indicate a need for not just streamlining, but also for the simplification of these definitions. And so that's a direction I'd urge the advisory committee to go. Thank you for your time.
There are no additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Please, that would be great, Moderator.
This is the co-moderator. I'm sorry, I see two individuals who are asking to make public comment.
Yes, we did just received two additional ones. An individual identified as Kershid, your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you, Moderator. Krishit Choja here. I just want to second Max's comments, also support what members Bullion and Nevedal have said about the need to streamline the regulations and make them friendlier for licensees who are applying. I'm all for public disclosure of significant financial interests, but what we have also requires the disclosure of even employees who get a single stock option, right? And what we've seen from the federal government is that they are intent on harassing folks who are in the legal industry. They will subpoena records from the BCC, things that are confidential and protected by trade secret, that they don't really care. And so when we require disclosures even of the smallest interest where you've got, again, an employee with a single stock option, is that really fair to subject them to that type of scrutiny when they don't really have a significant financial interest relative to others? So I would support what member Nevedal suggested, also a floor, establishing a floor before disclosure is required, and again expanding that exemption for public company investors to all investors. Thank you very much.
Individual identified as Nolan Mori, your microphone is unmuted.
Hello, my name is Nolan Mori. I want to agree with the sentiments that have been said before me regarding how we need to make more clarity and conciseness of the financial interest holder definition within the BCC regulations. As what was commented before, even a salesperson making a commission is too detailed of a level of scrutiny, but I do believe in the sentiment of having the public disclosure to know exactly who is funding all of these cannabis businesses, simply just to have transparency of knowing what other investments has this business historically gone into and knowing exactly the sentiment of the business and who funds them. So I think bringing light to having more of a concise definition of financial interest holder would help the entire industry as a whole be a bit more transparent. And thank you.
Next individual for public comment is Lindsay Robinson. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi there, Lindsay Robinson from the California Cannabis Industry Association. We represent about 400 plus businesses across the state. I would like to support the member Nevedal and member Baboulian, as well as Max Michalonis and Mr. Koja in their comments to streamline this process. Thank you.
Our last public comment comes from Lindsay Jones. Your microphone is unmuted.
I just wanted to reiterate that I think that it is very important for transparency just on the financial investment front. So while yes, a salesperson isn't the one that should be having to disclose their information, I think that the person behind the company's funding should be. I just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we do not have any additional requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Did you hear me? Yes, that please do. I'm sorry.
That's okay. This feature has been closed.
Go ahead.
One quick reminder, this is the moderator. If you are a member of the public, please note that we will not be addressing raised hands. So if you currently have your hand raised, please lower it.
Thank you, moderator. All right, we have a motion and a second pending. I would like to take a vote on the motion.
This is the co-moderator. Can I please ask the court reporter to repeat the motion?
Might take me just a second to find it, folks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. It was quite a while back. I'm sorry. I think this is the one, but can I try it on you before you make up your last mind? So I moved to modify my original motion that the Bureau of Cannabis Control, CDFA and CDPH, work to streamline the definition of owner and financial interest holder, the information and documents required from owners and financial interest holders, that the required documents relate to business formation and finances be consistent and streamlined among all three licensing entities.
Thank you. Vice Chair Heidelback, is that the correct motion?
Hi, this is Tamara. I don't think that is the correct motion. I think there were two. I think the one when we talked about it, it was across license types. And we do have to change streamline to clarity.
Oh, let me look for the word clarity. Maybe that'll do it.
So I believe it's the motion that after Ms. Heidelback spoke, I clarified for you, Ms. Court Reporter, and then we just need to switch out the word streamlined.
Okay.
And then maybe we can read it back again.
Okay. So we talked about, so when the clarity first came up, I'm sorry, I'm just going to have this off the record, forgive me, I can't write and talk. Clarity, did you change it and added the whole thing after that, right? Streamlined. Hang on.
Hey, this is Tamara again. I think if you just read the motion as I stated it and got confirmation from Ms. Heidelback, we can then tell you where to put the word clarity for streamlined.
So you want the last one read back again? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. I was trying to write it down.
Right, so we do need the last motion read back again. And I believe the last motion was, I stated it and then Ms. Heidelback confirm that that was her motion. We had switched out from across entities to across license types, if that helps you identify.
Wait a minute. And this is Ms. Colson speaking now, right?
Yes.
Okay, there are three of you that sound an awful lot alike. I'm sorry. Okay. I'll look for the words. Okay, I think. So I think that there was some static on there and I didn't get the whole thing, but I have streamlined the definition of owner, financial interest, and the information and documents required for owners and financial interest holders, and the formation and finance documents, that it be consistent across license types and streamlined.
That is the correct motion. However, we need to do the friendly amendment, which would replace streamlined with clarified. Is that correct? That was Clifford's amendment.
And you want the court reporter to find that there was something red, right?
You just read the correct one. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. I'm sorry, folks.
So we've had the motion read back with the friendly amendment to the word clarify, and we want to put this out for a vote.
Committee member Yu, I see your hand raised. Did you want to make an additional comment before the vote?
I did. I want to see if there's an opportunity to have at least a brief discussion before the vote based on the comments we heard from the public.
I would prefer that we take the vote, and if it fails, then we rediscuss it, because we've spent fairly lot of time in going back and forth on this. There's been a lot of work done. Let's vote it. If it fails, then we reconsider the comments from the public. But there were comments on both sides, by the way. So can I call the roll?
Yes, so I will start with the roll on this motion. Boboian?
Aye.
Dr. Cermak?
Aye.
Clifford?
Aye.
Farrow?
Aye.
Heidelback?
Aye.
Harada?
Aye.
Huffman?
Aye.
Jacobson?
Aye.
Lynch?
Aye.
Nebdal?
Nay.
Ron? Committee member Ron? Stevenson?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Wu?
Aye.
You.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Well, thank you for all the hard work on item number 7. Do we want to check in with Mr. Ron to make sure that his technical connection didn't break down again real quickly?
Yeah, sorry about that. My vote would have been an aye, so still here.
Okay, great. We can add you to the vote that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's move into agenda item number 8, which is a discussion and possible action on the recommendation related to cultivation. I'll read the comments provided for us to consider. There's two sections.
Sorry to interrupt you, but this is Catherine Jacobson, and I'm going to be leaving the meeting now early. Understand
I can't hear you. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
This is Catherine Jacobson. I apologize for interrupting Mr. Farrow. I would like to notify you that I'm leaving early, though I understand you still have quorum without me.
Thank you for updating us. Thank you for participating, and we look forward to you being able to join us again tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good. So let's continue on with agenda item number 8. There are 2 pieces to the recommendation related to cultivation that we're considering today, although I'm sure there may be some other discussion points. The 2 are allowing light deprivation in outdoor cultivation and shareable areas for licensee with multiple licenses, including nurseries with propagated materials. So reading the agenda item in more detail, the questions for these 2 items are, should light deprivation be allowed at outdoor cultivation licensed premises? Current law is the California Code of Regulations, Title 3, Section 88202, Subdivision G, which prohibits outdoor cultivation licensees from using light deprivation. Light deprivation is defined as the use of any technique to eliminate natural light in order to induce flowering. Under Cal Code Regs Title 3, Section 8000Q. Considerations are, when initially adopting cannabis cultivation licensing regulations, the California Department of Food and Ag, CDFA, Agriculture, sorry, I didn't mean to abbreviate, CDFA, considered allowing light deprivation at outdoor cultivation premises. The CDFA ultimately amended the emergency regulations to explicitly prohibit light deprivation on outdoor cultivation premises because such methods can produce similar numbers of harvests per year as mixed light Tier 1 license types. License types determine application and application fees based on the number of harvests and canopy size. Allowance of light deprivation for outdoor cultivation premises will likely necessitate a reevaluation of application and license fees to account for similar numbers of harvests as mixed light Tier 1 licenses. The second part is for shareable areas for licensees with multiple licenses, including nurseries with propagated materials. Question for the committee is, should a licensee with multiple licenses be allowed to share propagation areas and other areas among the licensee's multiple licenses? Current law is California Code of Regulations, Title 3, Section 8106, Subdivision A1J, which identifies pesticides and other agricultural chemical storage areas, composting or compost areas, and secured areas for cannabis waste may be shared between licenses held by one licensee or one license. Immature plant areas, designated processing areas, designated packaging areas, among others cannot be shared between licenses held by one licensee. Cal Code Title 3, Section 8106A1. With respect to nursery license requirements, only licensees propagating immature plants for distribution or seeds to other licensees are required to obtain a nursery license. Cal Code Regulations Title 3, Section 8300C. The considerations, CDFA initially did not allow for any shared areas between licensed premises, even if held by one licensee. The regulations were amended to allow some shared areas based upon how the activities in those areas related to the purposes for cannabis cultivation licensure, i.e., whether those activities would require a separate license. Also, CDFA must consider impacts shared areas would have on administration and enforcement of CDFA regulations. Because of track and trace requirements for propagated materials, seed to clones, through seeds and clones, through mature and harvested plants, it was necessary for efficient investigation and inspections to prohibit propagation, canopy, processing, and packaging areas from being shared. Public health and safety and prevention of aversion and diversion were additional issues that informed the current regulations. So, folks, those are the items we wish to discuss. Do any of our committee members have any talking points that they would like to address related to those items?
And I see Committee Member Nevdal has her hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Committee Member Nevdal.
Yeah, thank you. This is Committee Member Neville, and the past 2 years I chaired the subcommittee on cultivation. And during that time, the subcommittee brought recommendations for consideration forward to the CAC on both of these topics, on both the light deprivation issue in the outdoor tier as well as shared premise. So looking back on reports, in 2018, the CAC adopted a recommendation to allow for, that the outdoor definition should allow for the use of light deprivation techniques. And in 2019, we agreed to or approved a recommendation that a licensee holding multiple cultivation licenses be allowed to share propagation and processing areas in addition to the currently shared spaces for secured compost, secured waste, and ag, chemical, and pesticide storage areas. This is still, both of these topics are still ongoing issues. I know the consideration about additional harvests in the outdoor tier on behalf of CDFA, and that has been or posed some potential structural challenges for that license type, the outdoor license type. But also, I think as we're looking forward to consolidation and 2023, when we may very well see type 5 licenses come online, this static way or very linear way that we look at how folks pay for licensing, cultivation licensing, is not going to be applicable to a type 5. We can't just have this flat, right? You grow X number of square feet, assume this many harvests, so you pay, Y dollars. So I think there's probably some incremental steps that could happen between now and the standing up of type 5 licenses that would really help these two situations, specifically the prohibition of light deprivation in the outdoor tier and the shareable premise issues. And I'm talking about them hand in hand because we have many, many, many farmers in the state that have a combination of outdoor and light deprivation activities happening on said parcel. And that is forcing, especially small, across the board, that forces license holders to obtain 2 different licenses, even if the combined square footage does not fulfill the license tier. For example, 3,000 square feet of outdoor on the same, by the same licensee who has 7,000 square feet of mixed light tier 1 or light deprivation, right, activity happening, they cannot get one 10,000 square foot license. They have to purchase 2 licenses, therefore triggering the issues of no longer being able to share their propagation, no longer being able to share their processing, suddenly needing both of those licenses if they're going to share the space or to divide those spaces. And if they do acquire additional nursery and processing licenses to manage this issue, they are then required to get a self-transportation license at minimum to actually move their materials around their farms. This is so wholly inefficient. I can't even express to you the stress and the financial burden this is costing small businesses when in 2023, a lot of the stacked licenses that are larger businesses are going to benefit from the consolidation into a type 5, and our small farmers will not reap that benefit. So I strongly suggest that the CAC readopt the recommendations to allow for shared processing and propagation areas by a licensee holding multiple cultivation licenses, as we put forward in 2019. I think there's a couple different ways to address the discrepancy of how and what license types can utilize light deprivation. One is to expand the outdoor definition to remove the prohibition, and the second is to allow for lesser use in the ML1 tier. So if you have a mixed light tier 1 license, you are prohibited from conducting cultivation without a structure. And so these conflicts could be resolved simply by allowing for lesser use, perhaps, in that ML1 tier. I'm going to speak quickly to the nursery components, and then I'll yield the floor. My apologies for being long-winded. Nursery operations and the genetic situation in California's supply chain is finite, meaning that we've created in regulations a closed loop where nurseries have no ability to obtain genetics from cultivation licensees who have the ability to develop genetics, hold genetics, create seeds, but cannot in any way, shape, or form under any conditions sell that genetic material to a nursery or even share it with a nursery. So this rings true even in emergencies or in situations where a licensee, a cultivation license holder who holds genetics, maybe is forced to close and relocate that cultivation license to a new place, requiring a new application. There's no pathway for them to maintain the genetics even in that setting. So because of this situation, there is very little ability for us to expand genetic diversity within the legal supply chain. And furthermore, we have provided zero pathway for licensed cultivators to have their propagated plant material be considered essentially an asset. So in the case of insolvency or, again, having to close a license, there is no ability for them to sell off their propagated plant stock, which does have quite a bit of value. So I'll leave it at that, but I wanted to just point out those issues and that we have had this discussion, at least on 2 of these points in numerous occasions. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Nevdal. Does any other committee members have any comments? Please raise your hand. Committee Member Bullion, your hand is raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, on the issue of shareable areas for license types, licenses including nurseries, there's really no reason to have to duplicate the same area multiple times.
I'm sorry, sir. Sir,
Yes.
this is a court reporter. I can't understand you. It's very kind of.
How's that?
I don't know yet. I'm going to go ahead. Can you just start over again? I'm sorry. I just didn't catch it.
Sure. So what I was saying is on the issue of the shareable area for licensees with multiple licenses, including the nurseries or propagation areas, every room is a base expense. If you happen to be in a situation where you have multiple licenses, there really is no need to duplicate the propagation area multiple times over. It's the same procedure. You're just duplicating your expenses and your costs. And again, going back to who it benefits or what it benefits, really there's no benefit except creating an additional burden on the licensee and especially on the financial side of it, which a lot of this stuff impacts the growers up north more, the legacy growers, than it does the newer guys coming in. So on that, I would strongly recommend we move towards some sort of system where if you do have multiple licenses, you can share in common area, such as your propagation in that area. On the light deprivation, I'm a little bit conflicted because a lot of this, what it's going to do is it's going to be more of a financial burden. With outdoor cultivation, you got licensing fees that are different than the licensing fees that the mixed light people have to. So on that, CCI had a really great recommendation as part of the package that they sent in. It was either eliminate the prohibition on light deprivation for outdoor license types or remove the prohibition on open air full-term crop production for the mixed light, which I think removing the prohibition on open air full-term crop production for the mixed light tier 1 license holders would be a lot more appropriate than allowing the outdoor cultivators to create some sort of light deprivation system, because it's not really a matter of putting up a tarp for the outdoor grower to have a light deprivation system. There's got to be some sort of a structure in place that doesn't allow for any sort of light leak. And it would really be an unfair advantage to the outdoor grower compared to the greenhouse or the light deprivation guy to be able to have that multiple harvest per year. So if we're going to have that conversation on the light deprivation versus outdoor, I think it would be more appropriate to allow the guys with the mixed light be allowed outdoor than the other way around. That's all I have.
Committee member, Chair Farrow, I don't see anybody else's hands raised.
I see Committee Member Nevedal, and I just want to say to Committee Member Nevedal, don't apologize to the length of your comments. Of the people on this committee, your experience with cultivation is probably the one with the most. So we appreciate the information you provide us. So with that, if you have more you'd like to share, Committee Member Nevedal.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chair Farrow. This is Committee Member Nevedal. I am definitely would be in support of removing the restrictions on the mixed light tier 1 cultivators and allowing them to conduct open air cultivation. But I do want to say that just for clarity's sake, light deprivation does not mean that there are lights in the canopy area. So whether or not a significant structure is needed for that activity is debatable for sure. Light deprivation simply means that you are pulling curtains to shorten the daylight hours of that crop so that you force flower it. It does not mean more lighting. And in some cases throughout the state, light deprivation is being utilized by farmers to ensure that at high mountain elevations where they have very short growing seasons, they manage their sunlight so they can actually capture the maximum timeline of when they have high light efficiency or high lumen value happening from the sun. So in Trinity and in other mountainous areas in the northern portion of the state, we have light deprivation cultivators that are achieving 1 harvest. So this structure that has been set up of assuming how many harvests people obtain based on whether they cultivate open air or they utilize light deprivation is intrinsically flawed. It is inequitable, and it's wholeheartedly across the board dictates the way farmers manage their crops and how they can interact with the natural environment. So while an outdoor farmer in the southern part of the state may be able to achieve 3 to 4 harvests utilizing light deprivation with no lighting, a northern farmer is going to get 1 harvest. Outdoor cultivators utilizing autoflower seeds are achieving 2 harvests, and there's nothing in here telling them they can't do that. So I think, we have this broader question as an advisory committee. We're looking at consolidation. the licensing authorities have received budget funding to reevaluate the structure of the licensing systems. And I think with these recommendations and the fact that we keep, or this conversation and the fact that we keep coming back to recommendations around this light deprivation issue is indicator of the systematic flaws to how the cultivation system is set up. And again, I want to emphasize that we cannot maintain this current system of assuming what will be produced under any given license type if we are going to bring type 5s online, because ultimately what that would do would be to say there is a one fine or one license anyone who cultivates more than an acre of outdoor. There's one license price for anyone who cultivates more than 22,000 square feet of mixed light tier 1.
I'm sorry, I did not hear those numbers. Anyone who cultivates more than what?
1 acre of outdoor, right? Or anyone who cultivates, say, more than 22,000 square feet of mixed light tier 1. So, I'm sure that we have lots of public comment on these topics, but I did want to just really make sure that we're having an educated conversation about the reality that there is no way to assure that any cultivator is going to achieve 3 harvests or only 3 harvests, 1 harvest or only 1 harvest, right? So I will yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Nevdal. Are there any other committee? Oh, I see Committee Member Boboyan has his hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
And my comment about the structure wasn't to suggest needing lights, but you do need a structure to support the blackout shades. So if you have that in place, you're more in line with being an open air full-term operation than you are with being an outdoor grower that's simply using light deprivation techniques. And if we're talking about being in an area of the state that has limited light area, light deprivation doesn't benefit you because light deprivation, it deprives light. So if you're already limited on light, you're not getting that. I think more of the issue comes in with the mixed light being considered mixed light, where you can have a light deprivation operation going, but not necessarily be a mixed light operation, which is why I initially suggested removing the prohibition on open air full-term crop production, as opposed to allowing for light deprivation to be introduced in outdoor cultivation. I agree that just because you're set up one way or another doesn't guarantee you any number of harvests per year, doesn't guarantee you any amount of yield. And I think that's more of an issue as far as the licensing fees and the tax structures in place, which is not really the conversation on this topic right now. But I do agree with you 100% where we do need to visit the pricing, the taxing, and the licensing fees associated with any of this, where it should be more in line with what's being produced and how many square feet you have to produce it. And that's what I have at.
Thank you, Committee Member Boboyan. Committee Member Cermak, your hand is raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I don't understand the economics of either one, but it just seems from a sustainability standpoint, it makes sense to try to grow as much of whatever crop you're growing with the natural sun or the blocking of the natural sun rather than the use of electricity and lighting energy. So I think we should look at the sustainability portion of this as well.
Thank you, Committee Member Cermak. Committee Member Nevdal, you have your hand raised again. If you'd like to make additional comments, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think the structures needed for light deprivation literally can just be an PVC frame with no greenhouse cover. They can be very small and rudimentary impact on the landscape and have a very minimal footprint.
I'm sorry. You're cutting out quite a bit. Can you try that again?
My apologies. I think I was probably not close enough to my microphone. Is that better?
Okay. Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Member Nevedal just noting that structures required for light deprivation do not necessarily even need to include a greenhouse cover. They can be fully open air structures made out of PVC and other lightweight seasonable materials that do not have a heavy footprint on the landscape. The reason why light deprivation is utilized by farmers who only achieve one harvest is because when you have a very short season and your plants don't naturally start to flower until about mid-August, and then they're going to go for 9 to 11 weeks. That's well into October, where in mountain regions you're already having freezes in some cases. So folks will do their planting, start pulling their curtains in June or July to ensure that that harvest is out of the ground essentially in time for frost and winter raining season. So just a little clarification there.
Thank you, Committee Member Nevdahl. Committee Member Boboian, your hand is raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
I think we're sort of talking about the same thing. When I say structure, I don't mean anything about a wall. It could be PVC pipes. It really is just something to support the drapes. So now the question becomes, is a light deprivation setup more in line with an outdoor cultivator or more in line with the mixed light cultivator? Which the mixed light kind of, again, the only issue with that is just the existence of lights, and calling it mixed light. You can be a light deprivation system set up in a mixed light setup without any lights. So then the question becomes, are you really an outdoor grower or your mixed light thing? So yeah, again, it goes back to, is it removing the prohibition on open air full term crop production, or just moving the whole light depth setup to the outdoor cultivator? And whether you're fully outdoor or using light depth, you're not confused with mixed light.
Thank you, Committee Member Boboian. Go ahead, Committee Member Nevdahl. Oh, okay. Committee Member Nevdahl has lowered her hand. Are there any additional comments?
Sorry, I'm wondering just, I missed that. This is Committee Member Nevadahl, and I pressed the wrong button. I know we have a lot of items on the agenda, so I don't want to belabor this, and I want to ask Chair Farrow if we should consider making a motion and then going to public comment on this item. I feel as though I could do that, or if there's a preference to hear public comment and then make a motion.
I think we would be fine with making a motion and then go into public comment. Otherwise, we would end up having to make 2 trips to public comment. So let's make a motion if somebody's would be so kind or interested, and then we can go, if we get a second, we can go to public comment.
Okay. This is Member Nevadahl, and so if I may still have the floor, I would like to make a motion.
Yes.
All right. So here we go. I would like to recommend that a licensee holding multiple cultivation licenses be allowed to share propagation and processing
Hi,
areas.
Kristen, it's Tamara. Can you go a little slower so we can get the exact motion down?
Absolutely.
Sorry, can you just start over and maybe go at a little slower pace as we're trying to get it all down?
Copy that. I would like to make a motion that a licensee holding multiple cultivation licenses be allowed to share propagation and processing areas in addition to currently shared spaces. I'd also like to recommend that the cultivation licenses be restructured in pricing so that a cultivation licensee pays in relationship to the square footage they cultivate and the number of harvests they actually achieve. And in the meantime, that mixed light tier 1 cultivators be allowed to conduct open air cultivation. And I think that's enough for one motion. And we can come back to the genetic component separately.
I'm sorry, I did
Sure.
not hear that. There was some background noise. Just that last comment.
We can go ahead and read it back how we have it. And then Kristen, if we don't have it correctly, you can correct us. How does that sound? And then the court reporter can get it from that.
Yes, and that is absolutely okay. And just one of my comments was that I would like to still potentially address the genetic issue, but I'm hesitant to put it all in this one motion, as this is already a lengthy motion.
This is the moderator. I'm going to read back the motion, Committee Member Nodwell, if you can tell me if we have it. So the motion is recommend that a licensee holding multiple cultivation licenses be allowed to share propagation and processing areas in addition to currently shared spaces. Also recommend that cultivation licenses be restructured in pricing so that a cultivation licensee pays in relationship to the square footage they cultivate and number of harvests they actually achieve. In the meantime, allow mixed light tier 1 cultivators to be allowed to conduct open air cultivation.
Yes, that is my motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hearing that motion, do we have a second?
And this is Mr. Clifford. I'll second that.
Having a motion and a second, can we take this to public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the committee, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon located at the bottom center of your screen and type "I would like to make a public comment" and send to all panelists. I will be taking comments in the order that they are received. Please note that all other comments that are made in this comment chat will not be addressed. If you are calling via phone and do not have access, you are more than welcome to send a chat to the host and you will be addressed for public comment. We do have an individual identified as Lindsay Robinson that would like to make a public comment. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you so much. This is Lindsay Robinson from the California Cannabis Industry Association. We would like to wholeheartedly express our support for the motion and also support creating a pathway, by which a licensed cultivator is able to provide genetics to a licensed nursery for purpose of preservation and future propagation. Thank you.
Our next public commenter is Wade Laughter. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you. I would like to speak strongly in support of the motion that's been made. You'll hear from me again on this, but I really feel like the state needs help in sorting out how to make the legal market work so that the illicit market can eventually die out. That's the true issue with health and safety. And again, I'm strongly supportive of the motion. Thank you.
Next public comment comes from Paul Hansberry. Your microphone is unmuted. Paul, you are unmuted. Our next public comment comes from Max. Your microphone is unmuted.
Good afternoon, Max McAloon on behalf of Flocana. Flocana supports the motion.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that, sir.
Okay, Max Michalonis on behalf of Flocana. Flocana supports the motion in as much as they support allowing full-term cultivation in mixed light Tier 1 licenses without the use of artificial lighting. Thank you for your time.
Next public comment comes from a Ross Gordon. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ross Gordon. I'm Policy Director with Humboldt County Growers Alliance. We're a trade association representing nearly 300 licensed cannabis businesses.
Sir,
Yes.
you're talking awfully fast and it sounds like there's background noise.
Okay. I will try to talk more slowly. I'm not sure what to do about the background noise.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ross Gordon. I'm here on behalf of the Humboldt County Growers Alliance. Would like to strongly support the sharing of propagation and processing areas. This is one of probably the top 3 concerns we've identified. It really is a major logistical and practical challenge trying to split single processing areas into 2. And as committee member Nevedal mentioned, there are many, many small farmers in Humboldt County and elsewhere in the state who have multiple different small licenses, maybe 5,000 square feet, maybe they have 2 of them, and that prohibition creates major practical barriers for those farmers. We'd also like to strongly support including the encouragement of genetic sharing in this motion. This is, again, one of our very top issues. The inability to share and sell seeds and clones as cultivators creates serious practical challenges. It's also really an issue on a cultural level. There is a long history of sharing genetics and of freely circulating that among communities. Finally, on the issue of allowing light deprivation as outdoor cultivation, we're supportive of that as well.
30 seconds.
For a number of reasons that have been discussed. But again, one of them is that a lot of folks are being put in a position of having to obtain multiple different cultivation licenses, even if they're very small, in order to be able to use both light deprivation and outdoor techniques, even if they're using no artificial light. And that creates all sorts of other challenges and logistical difficulties that I think are really not necessary. So thank you for your consideration.
Our next public comment comes from a Michael Wheeler. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you so very much. This is Michael Wheeler, and I would like to simply voice support for the proposal at hand without further description of the challenges that small growers face. The motion is excellent, and we provide all of our support. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from a Mario Martin. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, thank you. I am Mario Martin. I'm with the United Core Alliance, and I do support the motion. I just have a couple questions where public health is paramount, right? So how are you protecting in an open air scenario when a fly lands on dung and then lands on a cannabis flower? How are we mitigating that? And then someone ingests that. So how are we mitigating that? I do support the, I believe, genetic sharing as well. So I do support that initiative. Thank you very much.
Our next public comment comes from a Joanna Cedar. Your microphone is unmuted.
It's because you said that they were taking it out of your bank account. And when IRS takes it account like that,
Joanna?
it's set up as a
Next public comment comes from a Paul Hansbury. Your microphone is unmuted. Paul?
Fuck.
Next public comment comes
Come on, guys.
a Polly Kinsinger. Your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you for hearing me. I am a cultivator in Humboldt County. I have both a Tier 1 mixed light and an outdoor cultivation on one parcel. I recently came across the challenge of having a greenhouse that wasn't performing as well as I would like to have had it. And I had plants in one license for my replant from my light depth that I wanted to move into my other license. I wasn't permitted to do that because I don't have a nursery license or a transportation license or distributor license or whatever it is I need to have in the middle there. So that was very challenging and disrupting to the way I do business and hope to be able to pay for my licensing fees. I also have another license on a different parcel that it makes it very difficult to have another secure area to house fuel and nutrients and fertilizers and things that we use for the farm as a whole. And it's redundant and very disruptive. So I'm very encouraged by the ability to move things between them. As for changing the license structure, it does seem crazy to me that as a cultivator, I can't have my outdoor cultivation under a greenhouse coop with no cover on it, with no light deprivation. It's not a greenhouse as you think of greenhouses where we provide air and we provide air conditioning or we dehumidify or anything. It's outdoor cultivation with a cover over the top of it when it starts to rain in the fall to hopefully hold on to that late season cultivation time. Because I don't light deprivate my full term season, which is what
10
Committee
seconds.
Member Neverdal was speaking about. I have one season, and when it gets late in the season, starts to rain, mold happens, and that hurts. Thank you.
Next public comment comes from a Craig Johnson. Your microphone is unmuted.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the floor. This is Craig Johnson, co-owner of Alpenglow Farms in southern Humboldt County. My wife and I operate a small farm. We have a small outdoor license on one property alongside a specialty cottage mixed light Tier 1. The mixed light Tier 1 operates at 1,500 square feet. We are highly supportive of this motion that Neverdal had made. It would support all these points that these other speakers had brought forward. And lastly, I would say that we represent the majority of what the farms look like here in southern Humboldt County and Humboldt County in general. We're a family farm.
30 seconds.
Moving forward into the legal market, and like Wade Laughter had mentioned, supporting this would greatly help us move forward alongside the black market that is still thriving because of these onerous laws. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from a Lee Pearson. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you. Lee Pearson. I have a quick comment about the way the motion's set up. If the second part of the motion counts the number of harvests, that sort of takes care of the mixed light being allowed to cultivate outdoors versus the opposite of that, which is allowing light dep on an outdoor license. So I'd like to recommend that you go both ways on that. If you're going to allow mixed light license to cultivate outdoors, do the opposite as well and allow outdoor licenses to do like depth. And the reason for that is it's very, very difficult to get yield optimization with the varying licenses, and sometimes counties have certain ways of measuring canopy versus the state rules. So that's my suggestion. Please consider it. Thank you for your time.
Our next public comment comes from a Paul Hansberry. Your microphone is unmuted. Paul?
Thank you. This is Susan Tibbin speaking on behalf of Paul Hansberry and myself. Good afternoon, Chair Farrell and committee. You know, for the smaller operators in particular, shared spaces are governed by social, cultural, geographic, and financial consideration. And these foundational aspects seem to be being ignored by the regulators. There seems to be an overriding assumption of criminality, and really common sense and carrots rather than sticks would go a long way to actually incentivizing the smaller entities and reducing the alternative market. Smaller operators and communities were struggling mightily before the virus. And, you know, we're all wondering how much financial ruin we need to see actually get for those of us who must utilize shared spaces, and a financially modest, easy access to shared spaces really are a social, cultural, geographic, and financial necessity. In terms of genetic diversity, there is a long and well-loved history of sharing seeds, and we're wiping out the genetic diversity, which means we're going to wipe out the kinds of medicines that have historically been made. And both Paul and I heartily endorse Ms. Neverdahl's proposal, and we thank all of you for being where you are and doing what you're doing. Thank you.
We have no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close this feature?
Please close the public comment section on this particular topic at the moment.
The feature is closed.
We have a motion and a second. Can I take the roll on the motion?
Yes. Would you like me to repeat the motion? No? Yes.
You can repeat the motion so that way everybody's fresh in what we're voting on.
Okay, so the motion is a licensee holding multiple cultivation licenses be allowed to share propagation and processing areas in addition to already shared areas. Cultivation licenses be restructured in pricing, so a cultivation licensee pays in relation to the square footage they cultivate and the harvest they actually achieve. In the meantime, mixed light tier 1 cultivators be allowed to conduct open air cultivation. And with that, I will start with the vote. Bobulian?
Aye.
Cermak?
Aye.
Clifford?
Aye.
Farrow?
Aye.
Heidelback?
Aye.
Harada? Committee member Harada, can you hear me? Move on. Committee member Huffman?
Aye.
Why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it this way?
Committee member Lynch? Okay. Committee member Nevdahl?
Aye.
Committee member Ron?
Aye.
Committee member Stevenson?
Aye.
Committee member Todd?
Aye.
Committee member Williams?
Aye.
Committee member Wu?
Aye.
Committee member Yu?
Aye.
Committee member Harada, I saw you unmute yourself. Can you, but I didn't hear your vote. Can you unmute yourself one more time?
Aye.
Thank you. Not seeing Committee Member Lynch, the motion passes.
I know that Committee Member Nevedal would like to make another motion, but in the interest of taking a 5-minute break for people to be able to either make a call or do other things, I'd move that we take 5 minutes recess and rejoin at 3:05. So with that, I would like to open back up discussions for Ms. Nevedal to make her second motion.
I see, before Committee Member Nevedal starts, I do see that we have some hands raised. Are these to make comments, Committee Member Williams, or is this from before? If not, please lower. If you want to make a comment, please unmute yourself. Thank you. Committee Member Wu, if you would like to make a comment, or are you raising your hand from before?
No, this is Bulbullion. I had a comment and also a suggestion on the motion.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Committee Member Bulbullion.
This is actually a follow-up to the last motion with Committee Member Nevedal. Over the past half hour, I've been kind of thinking about different scenarios and situations. And I'm kind of inclined to agree with Ms. Nevedal on her initial suggestion. Here's the general thoughts I have. You don't get too many situations where a mixed light operation turns off their lights and just goes open air. Outdoor operators using light depth isn't suggesting the use of temporary lights. So it's just about access to the drapes as an option, and looking at it from that point of view.
Sir,
Yep.
can you just go a little slower? I'm not quite catching everything. I have there's something about temporary lights. It isn't to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what I was saying is, I was thinking about it for the past half hour, and you don't get too many situations where mixed light operation turns off their lights and just goes open air. Outdoor operators using light deprivation isn't suggesting use of temporary lights, so it's just access to the drapes as an option. So looking at it like that, I think Ms. Nevedal is right in that why force the outdoor grower into a mixed light licensing structure just to get use of the curtains as a technique and forcing additional costs on them in the form of licensing fees, et cetera. So not to mention the environmental sustainability side of things. And this might be revisiting the same thing, but I'm kind of inclined to make a motion or suggest a motion to allow for outdoor cultivators to also have light deprivation as an option without forcing them into a mixed light operation.
I would second Mr. Bulbullion's motion if it's formal. This is Member Nevedal.
It is formal.
And I officially second Member Nevedal.
Hi, this is the co-moderator. Committee Member Bulbullion, can you repeat your initial motion, please?
Sure. So the motion is to allow for light deprivation as an option for outdoor cultivation operations without requiring them to acquire a mixed light license.
Thank you. Committee Member Stevenson, I see your hand is raised. If you'd like to make a comment, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Committee Member Stevenson, your hand is raised. Would you like to make a comment? Okay, the hand is not raised. Committee Member Nevedal, if you would like to make an additional comment, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. This is Committee Member Nevedal. I am hoping to save a little time here. So I would like to, I know there's a motion on the floor about light deprivation being allowed in the outdoor tier. But I am hoping it's appropriate that I can bring some conversation about genetics and then ask Member Baboulian to have a friendly amendment so we can just kind of fold a couple things into this one motion. Is that an appropriate course of action, or should we just take this motion, go back to public comment, and then pick up genetics next? So that's a question for the chair and or Tamara.
Well, the only thing I would say, this is Chair Farrow, is that I think it was simple of enough motion that we can move this pretty quickly, open up for public comment, and then get to your more complex one dealing with the genetics, because they kind of fall on different tiers of, and I don't want to lose what.
Very well. Then Member Nevedal suggests we proceed, and I will hold my comments. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Can we have some discussion between committee members? If there's any discussion related to opening up light deprivation to outdoor cultivation. Seeing no hands from our committee, can we open up public comment?
This is the moderator, and at the direction from the committee, I am opening the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type "I would like to make a comment" and send to all panelists. We will take comments in the order that they are received. I will pause a moment to allow individuals time to access this feature. Our first public comment comes from a Ross Gordon. You will have 90 seconds and be given a 30-second warning. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hello, everyone. This is Ross Gordon, Policy Director with Humboldt County Growers Alliance. We support the motion for all the reasons stated. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from a Paul Hansberry. Your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, thank you. I strongly support this and hopeful that it can be paralleled with the restructuring of the fee schedule and according to how many harvests you get. And more importantly, I hope that the BCC takes this recommendation and allows it to be interpreted in the way that it was intended. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from a Max. Your microphone is unmuted.
Max McGillis on behalf of Flo Kana in support of the motion. Thank you.
At this time, there are no additional requests for public comments. Would you like me to close the Q&A feature?
Yes, close the Q&A and take the roll, please. Oh, and read the motion before taking the roll.
The motion is to allow light deprivation as an option for outdoor cultivation without requiring a mixed light license. So with that, I will take the roll, starting with Baboulian.
Aye.
Cermak. Committee member Cermak, can you hear me? Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
Aye.
Thank you. Clifford.
Aye.
Farrow.
Aye.
Heidelbeck.
Aye.
Harada.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
Thank you. Lynch.
Aye.
Thank you. Nevedal.
Aye.
Thank you. Ron.
Aye.
Thank you. Stevenson.
Aye.
Thank you. Todd.
Aye.
Thank you. Wu.
Aye.
Thank you. And you?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Very good. Let's move on to if Ms. Nevedal would like to make her motion at this point, that would be great.
Great, thank you. So this is Member Nevedal. I do want to just make a couple quick clarifying points, or hopefully add some depth to the motion before I put it on the floor. So the finite nature of genetics is a real issue. We've heard a lot about the need to be able to share genetics, but I also want to point out that as California moves forward with their cannabis appellation program, there are genetic controls that will be in place in that program, suggesting that genetics may very well actually need to be shared amongst the farmers within said appellation region. So I think we have some definite work to do here. I also want to just express that in opening up a pathway for licensed cultivators to sell, say, propagated materials and or seed materials and or exchange and share genetics, I want to be cognizant to not impose unintended consequences on nursery license holders whose real sole business model is to provide propagated plant material to.
I'm sorry, can you, you're kind of, I don't hear everything. It's kind of cutting out. I'm sorry. Whose real sole business model is to provide.
Yes, so whose sole business model is to provide propagated plant material and seeds to licensees. So with that said, I also think that there's some inherent risk if we were to make a recommendation that allows cultivators essentially to conduct sales of propagated material and seeds in the same manner as nurseries, because how that is interpreted back to local jurisdictions, they're going to layer a commercial activity on top of those cultivators, and I'm afraid it could really impact and increase the land use restrictions on cultivators. So I just want to express I have these considerations when it comes to this recommendation. So there is also the R&D pathway that is available to cultivation license holders that allows for the designation of area of cultivated canopy to be utilized for research and development. I'm not going to wrap this into my recommendation, but I do want to go on record and suggest that perhaps the R&D designation that currently exists in regulations could provide a pathway for genetic sharing and potential sales from cultivators to nursery licenses and potentially each other. Now, with that said, I'm going to make somewhat of a broad recommendation because I don't know exactly how to accomplish what it is as far as regulation is concerned, the end goal that I'm looking for. So bear with me a minute here. Okay. So what I'd like to recommend is that during consolidation, a pathway, so I'm making a motion, my apologies. Motion is that to recommend that during consolidation, a pathway is created that allows licensed cultivators to share propagated material and seeds, essentially genetic material, between licensed cultivators and with licensed nurseries. And that there also may be, I think I only use shared, so I think there needs to be some opportunity for sales in there. So for sharing and sales of propagated material between cultivation license holders and from cultivation license holders to nurseries. Additionally, I think there should be a pathway created that allows for licensees to, cultivation licensees specifically, to sell their propagated material should they have to close their license and relocate or for some reason become insolvent. And I'm going to end that there, and then I'm going to request that I can get a read back. I apologize. I muddled it up just a little bit, lost my train of thought a bit. So would the court recorder please be so kind as to read that back?
Of course.
Actually, could the moderator read that back, please? This is Tamara.
Yes, this is the moderator. I'll read it back. So the motion is to recommend during consolidation, a pathway is created that allows licensed cultivators to share propagated material and seeds, such as genetic material, between licensed cultivators and with licensed nurseries, and that there also may be opportunity for sharing and sales between cultivators and nurseries. Additionally, there should be a pathway created that allows for cultivation licensees to sell their propagated material if they have to close their license and relocate or for some reason become insolvent.
A little repetitive, but I will leave it at that. It's thorough, so thank you.
Do we have a second for Committee Member Nevedal's motion?
Vice Chair Heidelbach, I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have any discussions from committee members?
I have a question. This is Alice Huffman.
Yes, recognized Committee Member Huffman.
Yes, and I'm going to ask this. I have listened all morning, so I'm going to ask this question overall, and maybe I can get an overall answer. But does any of these regulations that we are passing impede or hamper the social equity program?
None of this would impact anything that's being done related to social equity. This is simply trying to ensure that we have recommendations for consideration of draft regulations of the newly formed single cannabis department. And because of the timeline that's required under the law for public comment, and then if there's modification based upon that comment and so on, if we're going to hit the target date of July of next year, we have to start with recommendations now, and that can go concurrent with any other work that's being done within the state for equity applicants.
Thank you. I just didn't want to, I was listening to everything, but I'm not an expert in any field, so I didn't want it to inadvertently screw up something else.
Neither do I. Thank you for your comments, Committee Member Huff. So that said, I see we have a hand raised by Committee Member Babulian.
Yes, on the issue of social equity, one of the things I want to put out is a lot of this stuff would go a long way to support the social equity efforts by the cities up and down the state. One thing I'll generally say about the licenses is, for instance, the way I go think about some of the stuff is the license is not your business. The license simply authorizes an activity. So a lot of these companies, it's really on them to come up with the overall business model and then go and identify the license type that would authorize the activities within their company and their business model that would require that activity to be authorized. And the more streamlined of a process we can create in these new set of regulations and this new system by next year, the more we can lower the barriers of entry, the more it's going to go ahead and support a lot of the social equity efforts up and down the state. So that's what I'll say on the equity front. On Ms. Nevedal's recommendation, the only thoughts I would put out there is, again, going back to the license is not your business and it simply authorizes an activity. If the transactions are between license holders across the cultivation sector, regardless of nursery designation or grower designation, it might end up taking away a lot of the business model and the need for a nursery sector within cultivation. So, but I'm in 100% support of it. I think we do need genetic sharing. We need to be able to have cultivators working with each other and have a more of a collaborative sector in the overall industry. And these are just thoughts putting out there just for consideration that whatever we do decide, whatever the recommendation ends up being, it cannot be a situation, or it should not be a situation where the cultivator has all the rights of a nursery, but the nursery is limited to strictly being a nursery. So that's the only thing I would suggest being mindful of. But beyond that, I strongly recommend and suggest and support what Ms. Nevedal is saying, and same thing with Ms. Huffman. The more we can streamline this, and it's not just on cultivation, it's not just on the ownership of licenses and financial interest holders, the more of a streamlined process we can create, the more it's going to go to serve the interests of the legacy operators, serve the interests of the social equity applicants, and it's going to support a lot of the local jurisdictions that are putting together some of these programs.
Thank you, Committee Member Boboyan. Committee Member Cermak, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I support Nevedal's motion here with one concern. The concern is whether or not the phrase genetic material could create a loophole that would permit genetically modified organisms, meaning that people could plant DNA into a cannabis strain that would then cause that cannabis strain to have to create pesticides internally, things like that. So if you're comfortable, I would be more comfortable just getting rid of the word genetic material, so that we're just talking about propagated plants that are obviously within the natural strains that exist.
Thank you, Committee Member Cermak. Committee Member Nevedal, you can go ahead and start speaking.
Yes, thank you. This is Committee Member Nevedal. Good point, and absolutely not my intention to bring genetically modified materials into this conversation. I would be comfortable with a friendly amendment to remove genetic material so long as we reference both propagated material and seeds. I think that would probably cover it.
Thank you, Committee Member Nevedal. Committee Member Cermak, I see your hand is still raised. Did you want to make an additional comment?
No, I'm sorry, I just haven't lowered it yet, but that does completely do okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there a second? Or we would need acceptance of the modification from our second on that. I believe it was Ms. Huffman. Oh, Heidelbach, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Accepted.
Very good. Any further comments from the committee? Being none, can we open this up to public comment, moderator?
Absolutely. At the direction of the chair, I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Please type, "I would like to make a public comment" in the Ask field on the lower right of your screen and enter once sending to all panelists. I will take comments in the order they are received. You will be given 90 seconds with a 30-second warning. I will now pause a moment to allow individuals time to access this feature. Our first comment comes from a Ross Gordon. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Ross Gordon on behalf of Humboldt County Growers Alliance. We strongly support the motion. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Paul Hansberry. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, thank you. I strongly support the motion. I also don't understand why it would not be possible for a cultivator to sell seeds. I understand starts and clones, treads on the toes of the nursery and eliminates the possible need for that. But being able to sell the seeds as a cultivator, it's a byproduct of cultivation. So I think that cultivators should be able to sell their seeds. Thank you very much.
Our next public comment comes from a Lindsay Robinson. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hello, this is Lindsay from CCIA. We're in strong support of the motion. Thank you so much.
Next commenter is Wade Laughter. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. Cannabis genetics have been a strong interest of mine for many years. I feel like this is a really important change to the regulatory framework as it exists today. It's really important to be able to share these genetics amongst the folks who have license to do so. Thank you. I'm in support of this motion. Thank you.
Next public commenter is from Craig Johnson. Your microphone is unmuted.
Good afternoon, Craig Johnson, Alpenglow Farms, and we are in strong support of this. We're a small family farm in Humboldt County, and being able to share genetics and our life work that has been going on for multiple generations here in Humboldt County is greatly supported by this motion. Thank you so much.
Our next public comment comes from a Michael Wheeler. Your microphone is unmuted.
Good afternoon, Michael Wheeler on behalf of Flocana. We are in strong support of this. It does move great things for all the legacy farmers in the Emerald Triangle. This is a great leap forward. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Lindsay Jones. Your microphone has been unmuted.
Hi, thank you. This is Lindsay Jones with Aloha, and I'm in strong support.
Ms. Jones, can you, Ms. Jones, can you start again?
Yes.
There's a lot of cutout, and so just maybe close in on your microphone a little. Thank you.
I'm in strong support of being able to share genetic diversity is a major part of our culture. And I think that it would be in everyone's benefit to promote that. I strongly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we have no further requests for public comments. Would you like me to close this feature?
Please, and then if we can have a read back of our motion and a vote.
So the motion is to recommend that during consolidation, a pathway is created that allows licensed cultivators to share and sell propagated material and seeds between licensed cultivators and nurseries. Additionally, create a pathway for cultivator licensees to sell propagated material in the in the event they have to close their license and relocate or for some reason become insolvent. And with that, I will take the vote, starting with Baboulian.
Aye.
Cermak.
Aye.
Clifford.
Aye.
Farrell.
Aye.
Heidelberg.
Aye.
Harada.
Aye.
Huffman. Lynch.
Aye.
Thank you. Nebdal.
Aye.
Ron.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Thank you. Wu.
Aye.
Thank you. And you.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Very good. I think that closes agenda item number 8. Before we start with the next agenda item, I'd like to check with our committee to make sure that there's nothing pending that would require them to leave that could jeopardize us maintaining a quorum. If we can go forward, I would like to try to get through as much of item number 9 as possible today. So that way we are assured to get finished tomorrow and give plenty of time for people who may want to comment to things not on the agenda. So by a show of hands, if we can try to get through agenda item number 9 by say 4:30. And if not, we maybe can adjourn at 4:30. How many folks can maintain being on this WebEx till 4:30? By a show of hands.
My hand is up.
Very good. Mr.
I'm unable to find my hand, but I will be here. This is Cermak.
Very good. Mr. Baboulian, are you able to stay? Mr. Ron?
No, I would have to be off in about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
I have to jump off at 4 o'clock.
Well, let's see if we can't get through the beginning of 9, and if we can start to tackle conversations about let's get through the discussion points, and then if we don't make it to motion and voting, we can finish it tomorrow. How's that? We'll call it quits at 4 o'clock. Because I'd like everybody that's on today to be able to participate as much as possible. All righty, let's go.
Before we start, yes, thank you. Can I have everybody lower their hands unless they are wishing to make a comment?
So I will begin to read out agenda item number 9. Agenda item number 9 deals directly with the Department of Public Health's manufactured cannabis safety branch. The items that we're going to discuss are permissible ingredients for inhaled cannabis products, as well as the other one, a classification of manufactured cannabis goods. So, reading, the question for the advisory committee is, what ingredients should be allowed or prohibited in inhaled cannabis concentrates, which include vape cartridges, infused pre-rolls, dabs, etc. The body says the e-cigarette and vaping associated lung injury, E-Valley, cases occurring during the fall of 2019 in California were predominantly associated with cannabis vaping products obtained from unlicensed, unregulated sources. Though no single chemical agent was identified as the sole cause of the E-Valley, the state and nation learned more about the chemicals that may be used as ingredients in vaping products and their associated risks to public health. Current law, existing regulatory protections for cannabis vaping products include ingredient disclosures, Cal Code Regs, Title 17, section 40408. Cannabis product labels must include a list of all ingredients contained within the product. If an ingredient contains multiple ingredients, those sub-ingredients must also be listed on the label. Bullet 2, restrictions on heavy metals, pesticide, microbials, mycotoxins. Cannabis products are tested for a variety of contaminants and cannot be transferred to retailers or sold if they exceed any of the established action levels. Bullet 3, universal symbol required on cannabis vaping products, Cal Code Reg, Title 17, Section 40403, subsection C2, and AB 1529, 2019, requires the universal symbol for cannabis to be included on cannabis vape cartridges to inform consumers that the cartridge contains cannabis. Considerations: consider inhaled products so that they can only contain cannabis or cannabis oil and botanically derived terpenes extracted from plants. This restriction would ensure consumers of legal cannabis products continue to be protected from chemicals that may cause harm to health. On the section dealing with classification of manufactured cannabis goods, question for the advisory committees are as such. Are the current cannabis product classifications and regulations sufficient to account for the variety of products in the marketplace? Or does the state need to consider other ways to classify products? Current law, the current manufactured cannabis product classifications are: bullet 1, cannabis concentrate, BPC, section 26001, subsection H, Cal Code Regs, Title 17, section 40100, subsection I, cannabis that has undergone a process to concentrate one or more active cannabinoids, thereby increasing the product's potency. Sub-bullet, example, vape cartridges, dab, shatter, wax, extracts, infused pre-rolls. Sub-bullet, orally consumed concentrates, Cal Code Regs, Title 17, Section 40100, subsection HH. A cannabis concentrate that is intended to be consumed by mouth and is not otherwise an edible product, cannabis product. Example, subsection, example, tinctures, capsules, and tablets. Bullet 2, edible cannabis products under BP&C, section 26001, subsection T as in Tom, Cal Code Regs, Title 17, subsection 40100, subsection G, a cannabis product intended to be used orally in whole or in part for human consumption. For purpose of this chapter, edible cannabis products includes cannabis products that dissolve or disintegrate in the mouth, but does not include any products otherwise defined as cannabis concentrate. Examples, subsection, baked goods, beverages, mints, chocolate, gummies. Subsection 2, orally dissolving edible cannabis products, Cal Code Regs, Title 17, Section 40135, subsection B, an edible product that is an orally dissolving product. Subsection, example, sublingual lozenges and mouth strips. Bullet 3, topical cannabis products, Cal Code Title Regs, Title 17, Section 40100, subsection TT, a cannabis product intended to be applied to the skin rather than ingested or inhaled. Subsection, example, lotions, balms, creams, and bath bombs. Licensees have expressed some confusion with determining the proper classification for products because some requirements, including THC limits, child-resistant packaging, and testing action levels, are based on the product classification. Licensees' ability to properly classify cannabis products is important to ensure compliance. Considerations. Develop product classifications based on the methods of consumption, ingestion, inhaled, mucosal absorption, topical. I hope I didn't butcher that word. This pathway would create clarity by tying product classifications to the instructions for use. This pathway would allow the cannabis licensing authorities to develop product standards, allowed and prohibited ingredients that reflects risk created by a specific method of consumption. For example, a small amount of pesticide may be toxic if ingested, but not if rubbed on the skin. This would create clarity for licensees while also developing stronger and more targeted protections for consumers. That concludes the description of agenda item number 9. So hearing that, I would like to try to talk with our committee about both item A and B if we can, on the discussion and possible action on recommendations related to manufacturers of A, permissible ingredients for inhaled cannabis products, and B, classifications of manufactured cannabis goods. We have 9 minutes to begin before we will call it a day. So why don't we start with item A? Does anybody have any comments on permissible ingredients for inhaled cannabis products?
Committee Member Nevdal, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Committee Member Nevdal, your hand is raised. Are you wishing to make a comment on agenda item 9A? Oh, her hand is down. Are there any other committee members that wish to make a comment at this time? Dr. Cermak, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Committee members, Cermak,
Did I
you are
get myself
unmuted, but we
unmuted?
cannot hear you.
Yeah.
Dr. Cermak, this is the moderator. I have manually unmuted you, so you may speak.
Okay, thank you very much. As some of you might remember, I'm legally blind, so trying to get around this website is not always easy. I apologize. I'm in complete agreement with the consideration here that at a time when Juul has shown us that adding ingredients that are designed to change the taste, and in many cases do, whether or not they're motivated or not, nonetheless, we know, and there's plenty of studies that show that these are very attractive to youth. And it's at a time when we're already, through the Department of Public Health, working to try to get rid of flavorings in tobacco and in tobacco e-cigarettes, nicotine e-cigarettes, that I think it makes a great deal of sense for us in the cannabis industry not to lag behind what is already known and was clearly the trend and the goal in the tobacco industry, which is to limit the ingredients for a variety of reasons. Some of them health, and some of them the attractiveness to youth. I would add, be sure that we add pre-rolls and virtually anything that's inhaled, that we're not adding the ingredients, because the ability of even if you add extra terpenes from plants that are not cannabis plants, for example, the toxicity in the lung of some of them has been proven, and the safety of most have not been proven. So I would also hope that we do not permit the addition of extra terpenes for the fragrance or the taste that they would impart to any inhalants. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I'll listen to other comments, and then we'll see whether or not we'll have time for a recommendation today, or if we'll want to pick that up tomorrow.
Thank you, Committee Member Cermak. Vice Chair Heidelbach, I see that your hand is raised. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
I just want to second what Dr. Cermak was just stating. Dr. Cermak, myself, and some other committee members served on the Public Health and Safety Subcommittee before COVID hit, and one of our major concerns was that we don't actually have enough direction in the regulations, which lists what can and cannot be inside of a vape pen. And we had some concerns, obviously, and we went back and forth because there is an argument for licensed tested product versus what is on the illicit market. And also, folks being motivated to obviously purchase their products, in the legal market. But we wanted to really put some more clarification because we had so many people getting sick during this particular time that we were meeting, and it was obviously found to be some items, some additives that were in vape pens. That's all I want to add.
Thank you, Vice Chair Heidelbach. Are there any other committee members that wish to provide comments or discussion? If so, please raise your hand. Thank you, Chair. I do not see any additional hand raises.
What I'd like to do is, I don't know that we have a motion particularly on this, because again, I don't think we would have time to go through this if we're going to be true to our 4 o'clock shutdown, but I'm happy to entertain some public comment right now, so that way it could help us frame a recommendation for tomorrow on this item. So could we open up the portal to allow public comment on these first point of discussion?
This is the moderator, and I have opened the Q&A panel. If you would like to request to make a public comment, please click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and type "I would like to make a public comment" and send to all panelists. I will take questions in the order they are received. Again, if you would like to make a public comment, please utilize the page displayed for your reference. We will not be taking any hand raise at this time. Our first public comment comes from Dylan Burns. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Okay, my name is Dylan Burns with Infinite Chemical Analysis. We're a licensed testing lab down in San Diego. I just wanted to make a comment on the allowable products in vaping products. So when vitamin E was first hitting the news, we did some studies into cannabis in general, and what we found is that it's native to the plant. The plant produces vitamin E. So I urge caution if the committee is considering banning certain additives to vape products. Just like the lack of Cat 1 action levels for pesticides, if action levels aren't set for what you're considering banning, it's going to create an even more chaos within the testing industry. And furthermore, like if you're considering banning the addition of certain terps to vape products, how are labs going to tell if it's native or added to it? And like what the vape industry
30 seconds.
What the vaping industry really counts on is distinguishing themselves from other products. And outside of the packaging, really how they're doing it is how that product is formulated. So the flavor and all that comes from the addition of terpenes. So if you're banning that type of activity, that's really going to put a huge hindrance on the vaping industry. And that's all the comments I have.
Our next public comment comes from Jason Sarouche. Your microphone is unmuted.
Members of the committee, I'm a policy research associate at the Public Health Institute. I previously worked as a cannabis product safety analyst at the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission, which is under the Maryland Department of Health. I was directly responsible for receiving reports of adverse events related to medical cannabis and worked closely with the CDC epidemiologists assigned to Maryland to help identify potential cases of e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury, which I'll refer to as EVALI from this point forth. In response to this serious public health problem, the Maryland Medical Cannabis Commission put an administrative hold on all prepackaged medical cannabis containing vaporizer products until they were tested for vitamin E acetate. None came back positive, despite the fact that Maryland did have confirmed cases of EVALI. While vitamin E acetate was indicated in many EVALI cases throughout the United States, the association was nowhere near all the cases. The point I'm really trying to make is that we do not know exactly what caused all the cases of EVALI. What I can tell you with confidence is that botanically derived terpenes marketed as additives for cannabis products were scarce in 2018 and earlier, but they became much more widely marketed in 2019, which coincides with the sudden appearance of EVALI cases. There's also an evidence base for the potential toxicity of terpenes when inhaled. I would encourage you to view the technical report on the toxicity of inhaled pinene, a common terpene added to cannabis extract, that was published in 2016 by the National Toxicology Program. You should also look at the 2019 manuscript published by authors from the Portland State University Department of Chemistry titled Toxicant Formation and Dabbing, the Terpene Story. I hope you will consider the evidence and help ensure the safety of Californians by not allowing botanically derived terpenes to be added to cannabis products intended for inhalation. Thank you.
Our next public comment comes from Paul Hansberry. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear us?
We can.
Thank you. I am speaking for Paul Hansberry and myself, Susan Tibbin. Paul Hansberry and I had the privilege of acting as head judges for topicals at the renowned Emerald Cup for quite a number of years. It's distressing to see language in the considerations part of this item, which reads, a small amount of pesticide may be toxic if ingested, but not if rubbed on the skin. We're thinking of absorption accelerants like DMSO, like oxalic acid, among other things, which indeed are very, very serious and dangerous because the skin is actually the largest organ that we have. And I would hope that we would look very carefully at this and make corrections as necessary. Thank you very much.
Our next public comment comes from Wade Laughter. Your microphone is unmuted.
Yes, I full agreement with what Dr. Cermak said, as well as the person who spoke of the various studies that have been done. What it really comes down to is cannabis is medicine, and many folks take cannabis in various forms other than smoking. Inhaling cannabis is the most profoundly, potentially dangerous way of taking cannabis into the body. And there's all kinds of things to say about the different ways of getting cannabinoids into the body. I very much appreciate the idea of looking at these product classifications based on their method of use, because it is really at root a matter of health and human safety. Thank you.
Our next public commenter is Lynn Silver. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Lynn Silver. I'm a pediatrician and speaking on behalf of the Getting It Right from the Start program at the Public Health Institute.
I'm sorry, Doctor,
Yes?
this is the court reporter. There's some pretty loud background noise. I'm a pediatrician and I'm speaking on behalf of, and then I lost you.
Okay, I will try to speak more slowly. Is that better?
Yes, thank you. But there's still a lot of background noise, so just speak loudly, please.
Okay. We have 5 key comments. First, we strongly support the effort to develop more stringent ingredient standards. Second, as Mr. Sarouche noted, we do not recommend a blanket allowance for botanical terpenes given research already demonstrating potential harm. And third, also in many cases related but not exclusively to botanical terpenes, as Dr. Chermak noted, we do not recommend allowing characterizing flavors, whether from terpenes or otherwise, to be allowed to added to cannabis products for inhalation or combustion, to avoid the well-documented use of flavors to initiate and promote youth use. CDPH is actively working against this in tobacco, and we need a consistent and harmonious effort to eliminate the presence of flavored products designed to attract youth in the cannabis sphere. Things like
20 seconds.
the additional considerations are that neither flavors nor additional infused concentrate should be allowed to be added to pre-rolls, and we need to define clear limits of the potency of THC for use in inhalation products, ideally by requiring either mandatory metered dosing or putting a limit of 30% THC potency, as Quebec has done. So it's not just a matter of added ingredients, but also of the fundamental design of inhaled products and the risks that they create for adverse effects, addiction, problems such as psychosis. For example, what we are doing now will lead to an increased burden of serious mental illness and dependency and adverse reactions by allowing these very harmful products to multiply and increase in their percentage in the market. Thank you very much.
Our next public comment comes from Cecil Carter. Your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, my name is Cecil Carter from the United Cannabis Coalition, a social equity advocacy group based in San Diego. I would like to thank the panel for their time this afternoon. My organization is working with local policymakers in San Diego to develop effective cannabis equity ordinances that benefit communities most affected by the war on drugs here in San Diego. We're building coalition with groups such as United Core Alliance and the Cannabis Equity Coalition. We work together to provide local municipalities with best practices in the social equity space. I would like to see more representation from cannabis equity members on the Cannabis Advisory Committee. I look forward to working with you all and turning cannabis from a symbol of oppression to one of opportunity. Thank you.
Next public comment comes from Jeremiah Houghton. Your microphone is unmuted. Jeremiah, you are unmuted.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeremiah. I've manually unmuted you.
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw my request for comment at this time. Sorry about that.
Our next public comment comes from Mario Martin. Your microphone is unmuted.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say we should let the clinical trial speak to whether cannabis is good or bad. I think diacetol is the agent that is found in most vape juice that causes popcorn lungs. Popcorn lungs is the when
I'm sorry, Mr. Martin. I can barely hear you. Is there any way to just either speak more clearly or get closer to the microphone or something?
Is that better?
Much, thank you.
Okay, so I was saying we should let clinical trials speak to whether cannabis is good or bad because that's what they're there for, right? So diacetol is the agent that covers the air sac in the lungs that causes popcorn. So we should be making sure that the agents, the products that are out there carry no diacetol, right? That's what's causing the real harm. But,
Mr. Martin, you keep on trailing off. You start loud and then you trail off to a very low null. If you could please ensure that you maintain your your vocal loudness, so that way the court reporter can record it.
Oh, I'm not moving away from the mic. I don't know what's happening, but and I'm just saying, dicetyl is the agent that's found in vape juice that causes popcorn lungs that's killing everybody, or that's harming everybody. So if you make sure the vape juice has none of this agent or vitamin E, because that's not a smokable item either, then all is good. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
There are no further public comment requests. Would you like me to close this feature?
Please close this feature.
Feature is closed.
Thank you. And as I said before, we won't be taking any recommendations today. We are 10 minutes over our targeted quitting time for the day. We will recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow, where we will continue on this and give our committee an opportunity to make a recommendation, and we'll go from there. So thank you for attending today, everybody who participated. I look forward to you being on the call or Zoom or not Zoom, but WebEx tomorrow. Thank you.
Goodbye. Have a good one, everyone.
Goodbye.
You too.
This is the moderator. I will be closing the meeting now.